Hello, Christina Giordano here, the founder of Sold, your go-to resource for soulful entrepreneurship. And my philosophy is this: people can no longer be sold to, they must be sold to. That is SOUL''D. But in order to sell with soul, you need to be sold on you first. This is marketing and manifesting with nothing but the essence that is you. This is business that begins within. This episode is called The Role of Desire in Essence-Led Expansion Part 2. Now, this is part 2 to the 2-part series that began last week, all about desire-led movement in essence-led expansion. So if you haven't caught part 1, tune into last week's YouTube preview, or you can even head to the full episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And again, as another reminder, all of the full episodes are available there, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and Sold by Christina Giordano. Now, in part 1, we talked about what happens when identity stabilizes once you cross the threshold and enter something that I like to call the holding pattern. Now, the holding pattern is an interesting space to be. A lot of people call it the liminal space or the breathing room. I've heard it called a few things, but to me, it feels like a holding pattern because based on how I view linear capacity and nonlinear capacity, linear capacity builds the runway. Nonlinear capacity changes the altitude. If you think of aviation language and how they talk about a holding pattern is still based on orientation. You're still moving. Things are still happening. It is kind of like controlled direction. And the reason why that happens is so that identity stabilizes. At least that's why that happens here on the ground. So this first part was all about what the holding pattern was. The second part here is essentially about how the holding pattern opens up something new as a result of a stabilized identity. And that would be desire-led movement. Now, I've said this in the previous episode, but desire-led movement that is rooted in instability creates chaos. Meaning if you're moving from desire without a stabilized identity, without a stabilized signal, you're more than likely going to create a lot of volatility and chaos because you're moving based on adrenaline, based on excitement, based on energy spikes. But mature desire is different. And we talked about this too in the last episode. Mature desire feels like clarity, a pool, rightness, or even curiosity. It's kind of the feeling of quiet inevitability. There aren't any spikes to it. And if you know me by now, you know that I don't like spikes. They don't create or cultivate nervous system coherence. So when you're moving from stability, meaning a stabilized identity, a stabilized signal, you create something different than chaos. You create convergence. So this episode dives into how you begin moving from this place of desire. Now, again, you can listen to the full episode on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, but for the purposes of today, for the purposes of this preview episode, I want to focus on common misconceptions about desire-led movement because they are rampant all over the internet, and I want to bring some clarity and some levity and some perhaps even authenticity to the process of what it actually means to be moved by your desires. So that essentially, when you're moving from desire, you're not necessarily chasing what you want. You're standing where you belong and you're moving when something feels true. Now, let's go through a couple of these misconceptions that I also bring up in the episode, but we'll go through some of the bigger ones. Misconception number 1, you need to swing bigger to create results. I know that you've heard this before. This is essentially all about pushing harder, posting more, launching more, saying yes faster, or even just taking bigger risks. It has kind of like a gambling energy to it. What's actually true is that bigger movement without a stabilized signal, again, creates volatility, not expansion. So expansion doesn't necessarily come from swinging bigger. It comes from standing somewhere that's real, that's true, long enough so that life can finally meet you there, so that life can respond to that, to what's true. Misconception number 2, you just need to align your energy and money will flow. We've all heard this before too. This is essentially all about visualize more, tap more, affirm more, trust more, and detach more. I have seen and witnessed businesses within the manifestation industry fully collapse because all of these gurus and coaches who push more of an energy focused way of manifesting forget the entire process of stabilization, which is what is required when you're expanding from your essence. So it's actually true is that alignment without structure creates drift. You're just drifting forward. It doesn't create conversions. And while alignment without containment feels good, it doesn't reorganize reality. So those are two of the they're the biggest ones that I've seen in terms of misconceptions. There's one more that's actually one of my favorite. Oh, okay. Misconception number 3. This is the last one I'm going to talk about before I send you guys off to the full episode. Misconception number 3 is you should act as if you already have the results. I think we all know that acting as if is essentially performance. So the translation here would be perform confidence instead of stabilize identity. What's actually true is this: acting as if is performance. Orientation is embodiment. When you are oriented to something and your posture is oriented towards what's true, you can't deviate from there. It's how you move, and it's with precision because it's your purpose. It's what's true to you. So if orientation is essentially embodiment, embodiment is what reality reads. So keep that in mind when you're browsing whatever manifestation matrix things you can find. And remember that the most grounded, the most practical, the most effective way of getting what you want in life is to simply stabilize towards your purpose, stabilize towards the direction that is true for you, stabilize towards what is reflective of your essence. That's how reality reorganizes around you, because reality reorganizes around something that's actually true. All right. So I will leave you there. Enjoy the rest of the episode. From the misconception piece, after that, we go into the ways that you can start to move from desire-led movement. We also talk about how essence plays a little more into that. So I think you will enjoy it. As always, be well and take care.